Have you ever wondered how the French education system works? With all its unique traditions and those famous high-stakes exams? Well, today we're going to break it all down. We're going to follow the entire journey right from a little kid's very first day of school all the way to their final university entrance exams.
Okay, let's just dive right in with a question that trips up pretty much every English speaker. If a French teenager tells you they're going to the collège, what on earth do they mean? Stick with me, because we're going to get to the answer, and it perfectly shows why this system is so fascinating.
So, to really get a feel for it, we're going to walk through the system just like a French student would. We'll start with a big picture overview, then we'll dive into each stage, the early years, middle school, high school, and that all-important exam. And finally, we'll look at the unique world of French universities.
All right, first up, let's get a bird's eye view of the whole educational path, just so we can see how it all fits together. So as you can see, the French system is a real marathon. It is super structured, it starts really early, and school becomes mandatory at age 6. And you'll notice it all builds and builds towards one single incredibly important exam right at the very end. So, where does this whole journey kick off? Let's zoom in on the very beginning, the early years, where the foundation for everything else is laid. In France, you can actually start school as young as 3 years old in what's called école maternelle, which is basically preschool. But here's the catch, it's not actually required. It's split into 3 years that get the little ones ready for real school.
Now, what's really interesting here is how well the French system lines up with what you might see in the US or the UK. See that last year, the Grand section? At age 5, it's pretty much the direct equivalent of kindergarten in the States or year 1 over in the UK.
Okay, so after preschool, students roll into école primaire, or elementary school. And this is where things get serious, because from age 6 on, school is mandatory for every single kid in France.
So you've got 5 years here in elementary school. It starts with what's called cours préparatoire, or CP, for 6-year-olds, and it runs all the way through to cours moyenne de, CM2, which lines up perfectly with 5th grade in the US and year 6 in the UK.
And this part is just fascinating, the actual culture inside the school. The students are called écoliers, but get this, teachers are traditionally called le maître or la maîtresse, which literally means the master or the mistress. It carries this deep, old-school sense of respect. And just like in a lot of elementary schools, you'll have one teacher who handles most of the subjects for their class.
All right, now we're getting to that tricky part I mentioned at the beginning. The part that can get a little confusing for us English speakers. It's time for le collège.
Okay, so here it is, the big reveal, the answer to our first question. When a French person says they're going to collège, they mean they are going to middle school, not university. This is probably one of the biggest false friends, as they call them, between French and English. And just when you think you've got it, the French system throws you another curveball. Look at the grade names in collège. They count down, not up. You start in 6e, or 6th, and you end in 3e, or 3rd. It's a little weird, I know, but it's like a countdown to the final, most important years of school. So this whole middle school stage wraps up with a big national exam called le brevet. Now, it's not like this test will stop you from going to high school, but it's the official end of compulsory education, and it's their first real taste of a huge national exam. Okay, le brevet is done, so what's next? Students move on to the final stretch of their secondary education, le lycée, or what we would just call high school.
Now, at lycée, you've got a huge decision to make. You have to start specializing. You can either go down a general academic path that's all about getting you ready for university, or you can choose a vocational or tech track that prepares you for a specific trade, like becoming a chef or a mechanic.
So the grade names here are seconde, then première, and finally terminale. And that last one, terminale, well, it literally means the final one. It's the last stop before the biggest exam of their lives, and trust me, that name is no accident. Because everything in high school, especially on that general track, and I mean everything, has been leading up to this one moment, passing the national exam called le baccalauréat, or just le bac for short. This isn't just another test. It is the one and only key that unlocks the door to higher education in France. So, you've passed le bac. Congratulations. But what happens now? Well, for a lot of students, it's on to higher education, which, you guessed it, has a few surprises of its own in France. You see, in French higher ed, there are two very different roads you can take.
First, you've got the public universities, which everyone calls la fac. They're open to pretty much anyone who passes le bac. And then you have the grandes écoles. These are the super elite, highly competitive schools, kind of like France's version of the Ivy League.
And getting into those top-tier schools? Oh, just passing le bac is not going to cut it. You often need to get high honors, like I mentioned très bien, which means a very good mention, basically getting an A+. Some of these schools even make you take another grueling entrance exam after you've already finished high school.
And that really brings us to the big question, doesn't it? The entire system, from playing in preschool to specializing in high school, it all funnels down to this one single, incredibly high-stakes exam. So it makes you wonder, what does it mean for a society and for each student when one test you take when you're 18 can have such a huge impact on your entire life? It's a powerful thought to end on.